Picture this. You're a lady-in-waiting to a medieval queen, and it's been 3 months since Her Majesty last touched water. The stench is overwhelming, her skin is covered in mysterious rashes, and yet she refuses your gentle suggestions for a bath with a terror that seems almost supernatural. You whisper to the other servants about the queen's strange behavior, but none of you understand the horrifying truth. That woman, draped in silk and jewels, would rather endure the agony of festering sores than face what she believes awaits her in the bathwater: death itself. Before diving into these forgotten stories of royal terror and medieval madness, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale of medieval superstition. It's the story of how the most powerful women in Europe lived in constant fear of something we consider routine today. The medieval bath wasn't just avoided, it was actively feared by queens who believed that water could strip away more than dirt. It could strip away their very lives. The name Eleanor of Aquitaine might be familiar to you as one of history's most powerful queens, but what you probably don't know is that she spent the last decade of her life refusing to bathe, convinced that water had become her enemy. Let's start with why even the most rational medieval minds believed bathing could be deadly. To understand medieval bathing fears, you must first understand that medieval queens weren't just women in crowns. They were walking symbols of divine authority, their bodies considered sacred vessels that connected heaven and earth. Every aspect of their physical existence was scrutinized, regulated, and interpreted through the lens of religious doctrine and political necessity. Their skin, their hair, even their bodily functions were matters of state. Medieval medical theory, based on the ancient Greek concept of the four humors, taught that the human body was a delicate balance of blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Water, especially warm water, was believed to open the pores and allow these crucial humors to escape, leaving the body vulnerable to disease, madness, and death. For queens, whose perfect health was essential to kingdom stability, this represented an unacceptable risk. But the medical fears were only the beginning. Medieval Christianity had developed a complex relationship with cleanliness that bordered on the pathological. While spiritual purity was paramount, physical cleanliness was often viewed with suspicion. The early Christian fathers had preached that bodily discomfort brought one closer to God, that suffering in the flesh purified the soul. Many saints were celebrated specifically for their refusal to bathe, their holy stench becoming a badge of spiritual superiority. Queen Isabella of Castile, who funded Christopher Columbus's voyages, famously boasted that she had bathed only twice in her entire life, once at birth and once before her wedding. This wasn't mere medieval quirkiness. Isabella genuinely believed that maintaining her natural bodily state kept her closer to God and made her a more effective ruler. She wore the same undergarments for months at a time, allowing them to absorb her natural oils and scents, which she believed carried spiritual power. The political implications of royal bathing were equally terrifying. Medieval queens lived in constant fear of poison, and the bath presented the perfect opportunity for assassination. Water could be contaminated with deadly substances that would absorb through the skin. Bath attendants could be bribed or threatened. The queen's vulnerability, while naked and wet, made her an easy target for enemies who might strike when her guards were dismissed for privacy. Margaret of Anjou, Queen of England during the Wars of the Roses, developed such an intense fear of bathing that she created an elaborate security protocol for the rare occasions when she absolutely had to wash. Her bath chamber was searched multiple times by trusted guards. The water was tested by food tasters. The soap was examined by court physicians. Even the towels were inspected for hidden weapons or poisons. These precautions took hours to complete, turning a simple bath into a military operation. The fear wasn't entirely paranoid. Historical records document several cases where royal bathing facilities were indeed used for assassination attempts. Poisoned soaps, contaminated water, and even explosive devices hidden in bath chambers were real threats that queens faced. The bathroom had become a battlefield where relaxation could mean death. Medieval queens also feared that bathing would wash away their royal essence. They believed that their divine right to rule was literally embedded in their skin, that their natural oils and scents carried the mystical properties that made them different from common people. Washing too frequently might dilute this royal power, making them vulnerable to challengers who questioned their legitimacy. This belief was reinforced by medieval theories about royal blood. Queens were taught that their noble lineage gave them special bodily properties that distinguished them from peasants. Their sweat was considered more refined, their natural scent more pleasant, their skin more naturally pure. To wash away these natural qualities with common water seemed like a betrayal of their birthright. The practical realities of medieval bathing made these fears seem reasonable. Medieval baths were communal affairs with multiple people sharing the same water. The lack of proper sanitation meant that bathwater quickly became contaminated with diseases that could spread through open cuts or sensitive skin. For queens who needed to maintain perfect health to fulfill their duties, the risk seemed greater than the benefits. Eleanor of Aquitaine's final decade provides the most dramatic example of how these fears could consume a royal mind. After a lifetime of political intrigue and constant threats, Eleanor became convinced that her enemies were planning to poison her through her bathwater. She began refusing all forms of washing, allowing her ladies-in-waiting only to dust her with perfumed powders and change her outer garments. The queen's appearance became increasingly shocking as months passed without proper washing. Her skin developed a grayish pallor, her hair became matted and greasy, and her body odor grew so intense that courtiers had to position themselves strategically to avoid the worst of it. Yet Eleanor remained convinced that her unwashed state was protecting her from assassination attempts. Her paranoia reached such heights that she began interpreting every suggestion to bathe as evidence of conspiracy. When her own physicians recommended washing to treat skin conditions, Eleanor accused them of working for her enemies. When her ladies-in-waiting brought rosewater for light cleansing, she saw it as proof that they had been corrupted by foreign gold. The psychological toll of this self-imposed filth was devastating. Eleanor, once known for her beauty and elegance, became increasingly isolated as her appearance deteriorated. She spent her final years in a kind of self-imposed exile, too ashamed of her condition to appear in public, yet too terrified of bathing to change her situation. Medieval queens also feared that water could reveal their physical imperfections to potential enemies. In an era where any sign of weakness could be exploited by political rivals, the nakedness required for bathing presented unacceptable risks. Scars, birthmarks, or any physical abnormalities could be interpreted as signs of divine displeasure or evidence of unfitness to rule. The fear of exposure extended beyond physical imperfections to include the revelation of pregnancy, illness, or aging. Queens needed to maintain an image of eternal youth and perfect health. Bathing in the presence of attendants, no matter how trusted, created opportunities for gossip and speculation that could undermine royal authority. Some queens developed elaborate deception strategies to maintain their image while avoiding actual bathing. They would change clothes frequently, use heavy perfumes to mask odors, and employ cosmetics to create the illusion of cleanliness. These theatrical approaches to hygiene required armies of servants and enormous expenses, but they allowed queens to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of actual water contact. The medieval church's influence on royal bathing fears cannot be overstated. Religious authorities taught that excessive attention to bodily cleanliness was a form of vanity that could lead to spiritual corruption. Queens were caught between their need to maintain royal dignity and their obligation to demonstrate Christian humility through bodily neglect. Many queens resolved this contradiction by embracing filth as a form of religious devotion. They would publicly declare their unwashed state as evidence of their spiritual purity, turning their fear of bathing into a badge of holy honor. This religious justification allowed them to avoid the risks of bathing while maintaining their reputation as devout Christian rulers. The seasonal nature of medieval bathing fears added another layer of complexity. Queens were particularly terrified of bathing during winter months, when cold water and inadequate heating made the process genuinely dangerous. Many developed respiratory illnesses or died from exposure after winter baths, reinforcing the belief that water was inherently deadly during certain times of year. Summer bathing presented different but equally terrifying risks. Warm weather made water contamination more likely, and the increased activity of insects and vermin around water sources created new opportunities for disease transmission. Queens learned to fear bathing regardless of season, each time of year bringing its own unique dangers. The international implications of royal bathing fears affected medieval diplomacy in unexpected ways. Foreign ambassadors would report back to their rulers about the hygiene practices of the courts they visited, and these reports influenced political alliances and marriage negotiations. Queens who were known for their cleanliness were sometimes viewed with suspicion, while those who embraced filth were praised for their spiritual devotion. Marriage negotiations often included detailed discussions about bathing expectations. Foreign princes would inquire about their potential bride's hygiene practices, and queens would demand guarantees about their future husband's bathing requirements. These negotiations could make or break international alliances, as rulers sought partners who shared their understanding of the proper relationship between royalty and water. The legacy of medieval bathing fears persisted long after the medieval period ended. Renaissance queens inherited many of these anxieties, and traces of water-related paranoia can be found in royal courts well into the modern era. The association between bathing and vulnerability became so deeply embedded in royal culture that it influenced palace architecture, court etiquette, and even the development of early modern hygiene practices. Understanding these medieval fears helps us appreciate how profoundly different the past was from our present. What seems like basic hygiene to us represented a complex web of medical, religious, political, and psychological dangers to medieval queens. Their terror of the bath wasn't ignorance or superstition, but a rational response to the genuine risks they faced in a world where water could indeed mean death. The next time you step into a shower or sink into a warm bath, remember the medieval queens who viewed such simple pleasures as potential death traps. Their fears may seem irrational to us, but they were born from a world where the most powerful women in Europe had to choose between cleanliness and survival, where the bath chamber was more dangerous than the battlefield, and where water itself had become the enemy of royal power. Their story reminds us that behind every historical narrative of royal grandeur, there are individual human stories of fear and survival that deserve our attention and our compassion, even across the vast gulf of centuries that separate us from their water-fearing world.